Jordan
There we
Green,
go.
how are you?
Good. How we doing?
Oh man, I have all kinds of questions about regenerative farming.
All right.
No, I'm not, what I binged on some of your videos over the last couple days, and I was thinking that when I was growing up, the whole image of the American farmer, and I think you and I are about the same age, was was far different than what maybe most people perceive it to be. And when I heard that you live in and farm in the Shenandoah Valley, I was thinking, wow, that's like the cradle of civilization for America. What? Let's start with what your day started out like today.
So today was a little bit of an off day, quote unquote, for me. So I didn't get up till about 6. Um, didn't work out today because I got an injury I'm dealing with. So got some breakfast. Was out the door by about 7. Doing stuff on the farm. Right now I'm playing around with boiling down black walnut sap to make black walnut syrup. So got a fire going for that first thing. Did some animal chores, and then the rest of the day I've actually been hauling some grains that we buy from a local farm from their farm over to our farm. So it's been a lot of 25-mile-an-hour driving. Actually, it's been most of my day so far.
Now, I'd watched one of the videos that you had given a little background on yourself, but I wanted to expand on that because, um, a lot of Marines that I know, uh, be it in an air wing or in the infantry or something like that, aren't spending their days thinking about when I get out of this, I'm going to buy some land and I'm going to farm. And
Uh-huh.
and though you worked on a horse farm cleaning stalls as a young man out of high school, what is it that you wanted to do exactly? And did it turn out to be such?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that motivate me to do something, and I think motivate anybody. It's no one big thing. I think I'm very fortunate, though. Excuse me a second. I'm very fortunate, though, that many of the things that I enjoy and passionate about, I'm able to do. So I, enjoy working outside, working with my hands, working with equipment. I enjoy having a different workflow every day, and not just be a repetitive, monotonous type of existence. And those, could be called very selfish motives. Those are things that are important to me, but might not be important to the bigger picture of what's good for humanity or the environment that we all live in. And it's been very fortunate that I was able to couple those things that I find enjoyable and stimulating to me into a career path that also has a lot of positive impact for a local community, for the land that we live on, and the bigger issues that we as a human society are tackling and facing today. Um, I realize more and more how unique it is to have a combination of all those different things come to fruition in this thing that we do, which now is being called regenerative agriculture, but 10 years ago had another term. Um, this being this more of plugging back into what is a natural symbiotic order of animals and humans and forages and grasses all existing together on this planet.
What was that term that was used 10 years ago?
I mean, the big one was sustainable. That was being used for a while, and before that, it was organic, which now has been kind of corrupted in what its definition is, and a lot of what you can buy as a consumer now that has an organic sticker on it might not be as uh, pure as you think it is.
Right.
But my point being, like when I went through Polyface in 2001, regenerative really was not a term that was out there at all. Sustainable was kind of the big catchphrase, and they were doing the exact same thing then as they're doing now. It's just the marketing term, or what is the vogue uh, term that's being used for this movement. It's kind of changed over the decades.
Well, so is marketing, and especially with social media. I mean, I watched one of your videos where you were telling people uh, who wanted to learn from you some very basic components of the 21st century. That is cell phone, texting, and really being on the grid. And that's when I thought, wow, this is really fascinating because you're using all of these components to help other people. What's the history of Farmbuilder?
So it kind of came together in 2015 or 16. You know, again being plugged into social media. Definitely watch my fair share of YouTube and seeing what's out there. There's a lot of info being shared on the homestead level or the small sustainment type of farm where people were showing what they were doing and had going on. There really was not a lot being done to show kind of the day-to-day operations of larger scale farms outside of conventional farms. You can find YouTube shows and videos on, I think like Corn Kings is one of them or something like that. But there really was not a representation of here's how to do these, maybe it was sustainable then, now is regenerative,
Mm.
uh, you know, operations and enterprises on your farm at a scale that can actually support a full-time income. Because that's the biggest question that this movement has had to explain to the broader farm community is this is an economic path forward for longevity and sustainability of farming communities. It's not just a earth muffin thing where we're trying to save the soil and the earthworms. This is actually very essential towards saving agricultural communities and this rural lifestyle. And so what needs to be shown to these farmers or people who are aspiring to do this as a business is how to do it at scale. And so that's really what kind of moved me to it. Obviously being a marketer and a business person as well, I see it as, man, this is a wide open area that no one is really touching right now in new media. There's a lot of books that are being put out by various people and conference speakers, but at that time, not a lot of people were hopping on YouTube and just saying, "Hey, here's how to run 100 pigs on pasture," or "Here's just the basics of how you buy cows from the stockyard." Things that to farmers are kind of second nature. It's just part of existing in this sphere. But if you are someone who's coming from the outside in, which is where we're seeing a lot of new capital and new blood coming into this industry, they're starting from square one. They don't know the first thing about it, and it kind of started from there. And it's kind of a side hobby for me, and it still kind of is. I still have a farm business that I run the majority of the time. But I would, with Farmbuilder, it's been a fun ride for the last 5 years.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it's entrepreneurship in its most primal form, and it's probably the oldest kind of entrepreneurship that we've had in this country. Uh, but what do you ever look back? Because I watched your 10th anniversary video. I think that was done over the summer. That's when you had posted it, and that's what really hooked me at first. First of all, I love
Uh-huh.
how amazing high definition video is now and good soundtrack, and whoever's playing those really cool country kind of licks in the background and putting it together. But I was like, wow, you've really built something in 10 years. And not only that, uh, you've been, whether it was your intention or not, thrust into this role of really mentoring people from it. And what I wanted to know, what are the types that are there 3 or 4 different types of would-be farmer or experienced farmer that you're dealing with? And are there any real success stories where you felt, wow, I'm doing the right thing? This is something
Mhm.
that's I've been put in place to help people.
Right. Um, People come to this from all backgrounds. Right now on our farm, we have people working for us that have degrees in philosophy, in English, in bio. Just coming from working as a waiter server in restaurants, that have been shut down. There's this huge um, talent base that is coming in with new blood. It's actually easier to train new people than to train old dogs new tricks. And that's something that we've kind of found along the way. But to me, what really is a cool moment to reflect on, because that 10-year video was actually filmed in 2019 and it just never got put out till this year. So of course someone in the comments was like, why isn't anybody wearing any masks? Like, chill, man, it says 2019 right in the title.
Right.
But so we've had people that work for us that have now gone on and started their own farms and are doing cool things. To me though, the most visceral experience of how what we're doing is impacting others outside of all of the families that support our farms and the other farms that are buying piglets from us, and that interaction directly with them, has been the team that we're building here on our farm, and having other people that are working full time for us, and we have 7 people right now that work for us, and seeing how these ideas that we originally came back in 2009 and started with just Laura and I doing it, we're now having that next level impact that we talked about a couple minutes ago, of this is now positively impacting an agricultural community, that we can now hire people and pay them competent wages to other industries in the area, and we're not having to basically rely on family help or friends that you can drag in to help you bale hay on the weekend. We're building a team of agricultural professionals, and this is what these people, to a greater or lesser extent, are doing as a career. And to be able to build our business to be the catalyst for that, probably answers your question the most. That's kind of the real hands-on result of what we're seeing, is not only are we supporting ourselves and our family, we're now have other people that are part of the team that are relying on us, obviously, to make good decisions with the business. But it's proving that the model can and does work.
I would imagine it's, you mentioned regenerative, but it's a regeneration of one's spirit to be. I mean, I couldn't imagine how magnificent it would be to wake up every day where you are and doing what you really want to do. And that really comes through in the videos. You seem like a very happy person. I mean, I'm sure you have all kinds of very tangible obstacles in your path, but my God, I mean, it's like I was watching and I was like, I just want to breathe that air right now. I'm right outside Chicago, and it's pretty here. But like I said, I grew up in the shadow of the Farm Aid concerts. That's what the American farmer is taking a hit, and here comes Willie Nelson, and whoever
Right.
else he could bring on the bill. Right. And so that was my initial reaction, or being exposed to it. But tell me a little about you. You're from New York State originally?
Yeah, so I was born in upstate New York, a little town called Ellenville, which is in Ulster County. It's about 90 miles north of the city. So not from the city, but true upstaters from state, usually like up by the Finger Lakes in Buffalo, where they have real winter. But lived there till I was 14, and that's when we moved down here to Virginia. So the first place that we lived was maybe 5 miles from here, and outside of my going to Polyface Farm and then going to the Marine Corps, I've lived within 15 miles of here. Because like you said, this is one of the more beautiful places in the country for agriculture. This was the breadbasket of the Confederacy. This is where a lot of their small grain production was done, and where a lot of, to a more unfortunate, piece of history, this is where a lot of conventional tillage equipment was developed, was here because of the small grain production. So there's both good and bad history here in the Shenandoah Valley when it comes to agriculture, but I certainly enjoy living here, and I guess that's why we're still here.
There were some very big battles in that area.
For sure. Yep.
I think McClellan was based around there, or Andrew Jackson I forgot which general, not Andrew Jackson, but it was there was some Confederate drive through the north, and the Shenandoah Valley was the thing you had to get through.
probably the more well-known Confederate general who had several Valley campaigns was Stonewall Jackson.
That's the
Um,
Jackson I was thinking of. Yeah.
yeah, in the early parts of the war, there were other guys that cycled in and out of the Valley for different campaigns. Really, the federal general that kind of put an end to activities here in the Shenandoah Valley was Philip Sheridan
Hmm.
in '64, and that's when what is called the burning occurred, and that's where they burned every grain mill, barn, basically anything that had to do with agricultural production that they could get their hands on. They swept from the north of the valley to the south and just left a trail of smoke behind them. And there's still, old families here that are kind of bitter about that. So as a Yankee, I have to be a little bit careful talking about history around some people because my ancestors burned down their ancestors' barns and stuff, and it can be a little touchy point with, especially with some older folks.
I would imagine so. Were the Greens or your mother's side of the family, were they in the Union Army way back when?
Both sides are from the north. I'm pretty sure that we had ancestors from Ulster County that were in regiment. I think it's the 84th New York Regiment. There's names on their rolls that are Greens, and we're a big family in that area. I was the eighth
Jedediah
gen.
Green.
Yeah, I was the eighth generation born in that town, so my family goes way back to the Revolution in that area. So I don't know for certain, but I would imagine there was probably a few relatives that trot around the South.
But still, it's you're part of something. You're part of history, and I'm sure that you're mindful of farming in that area. Have you ever read books about early farmers in the valley?
Um, I've read some more just general history of the valley types of books, and they talked about some of the agricultural practices. I've not dug deeply for actual biographies of people who actually were here in farming. Um, what is interesting to note looking at, so there's this, I assume it's for every county in the country, but there's this publishing house that puts out like a historical book of your county.
Sure, we
And
have that here too.
okay, so yeah, same thing. So, for here in Shenandoah County, what's interesting to look at pictures from say 1860, 70, and 80 when cameras first, started becoming more popular was the extreme lack of trees that were in the Shenandoah Valley and even on the Blue Ridge Mountains on either side of us.
Hmm.
That there was basically a complete deforestation of everything around here. And the what's interesting, the history of that was the Shenandoah Valley was one of the only iron-rich areas in the South, and there was a lot of iron ore that came out of here, and they used all of the wood to make charcoal to fire these smelting furnaces, which are still here. Tucked, not as many obviously, but they're still around, tucked up into the sides of the hills and stuff. Are these iron furnaces where they have these big, 40, 50-foot high rock edifices that was the furnace that they would stack in with the iron ore and all this charcoal to make the iron bricks that were then shipped off to foundries to turn into iron and steel products. So
Wow.
that is an interesting kind of history that you can see all around you if you look for it. But just to see how much the landscape can change in just 170 to 150 years, that it can go from no trees to the heavy forestation we see now, and it just goes back and forth. It goes to show how in motion nature is when in our day to day you don't really see it.
I was thinking about your family, and one of the things that you had mentioned that you were homeschooled, and I imagine you were homeschooled very well. I don't know anything about your folks, but the fact that the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps the Gulf, the second Gulf incursion or war, um, that you weren't able to be recruited in the top tier. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the way it worked pre 2003 was homeschool graduates were treated the same as a high school dropout. So especially for the Marine Corps, they had a very limited number of contracts that they would offer to people like that, and they were what's called an open contract,
Mm,
which basically means you could be anything from a toilet scrubber to whatever. They pick, and that to me was not quite. I was not quite ready for that level of take me and do what you will. Um, and so it didn't matter what your grades were or what topics you had studied or whatever. Um, that was irrelevant. It was you had to have that official diploma from the state.
right.
So 2003, obviously we invade Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2003, and lo and behold, wars have a magical way of changing DoD policy, and that's when they shifted that to where they now treated homeschool graduates the same as they would a high school graduate, and it was you were rated as a peer instead of as some kind of afterthought.
Right. Where'd you do your boot camp?
Paris Island, where
Really?
where the real Marines go.
Yeah. I know so many, all my friends who were in the Marine Corps, you can never say ex-Marines. I'm always a Marine. And I'm sure
Uh,
I'm not going to make that mistake again. But um, it's funny. I met Arlie Ermy, who played the
oh yeah,
DI.
yeah.
He's the nicest guy. And when I heard that he passed away, it was really, really sad. But and he was really. I told him, look, I was born in 1970. He says, all right, you were born between the wars, you know.
Uh-huh.
But
Right, right.
I screened a film that I made at the GI Film Festival, and he was the first one there. It was at
Mhm.
9 in the morning or 10 in the morning. It was like, I'll never forget that. But when you're doing your daily chores, do you ever think about boot camp? Like, what was some of the hardest stuff you had to negotiate, circumvent, and vest any kind of Marine Corps obstacles?
Uh-huh. Boot camp is an interesting thing that the goal is to mentally stress you to a high level to where you basically reach where you think you're at a breaking point, but they're not going to let you break. It's to push you beyond that so hey, I can do a lot more than I thought I could.
Mm,
They actually don't want you to quit to the point where some people are getting through boot camp who really should not go out to the fleet and become fleet Marines, especially in 2004 or five when there was huge ramp ups of troop levels. But the key to surviving boot camp is just to understand it's all a big mind game. That they play their game, and as you go through the process, you learn how to start playing your game with them a little bit, and just suck it up and suffer. You'll get through. They will feed you 3 times a day. They have to let you sleep 8 hours every night. And the reason the military really likes to recruit out of rural areas is a lot of farm boys are used to that type of schedule of getting up early, working and sweating in the heat all day, throwing hay bales around, and eating when you can, and then going to bed. So yeah, I would say the harder parts of it are just mentally adjusting to having 3 DIs screaming in your face. But once you can turn that switch off, it's really a fight not to laugh after a while, because they can't actually hurt you. They're just barking in your face and carrying on. Um, yeah, so beyond that, then it's just little things like just your personal annoyance with being in the rain all day or having all of these bugs biting on you and you can't do anything on it. But yeah, it's all just things in your mind that are mental blocks that if you can get over them, you'll be fine and you'll go right through. So it's one of those experiences. Afterwards, once you graduate, and I was talking with a buddy of mine that we went through, we both agreed that it's one of the best experiences of our lives to that point, but also it's something you never really want to do again. So
right.
it's kind of like a check and done, and let's move on.
Do you remember your first
Um,
night that you got down there?
Yeah, so I did not have the whole bus pulls up, DIs run on screaming and get
Oh,
you all off, because being here in Virginia, we don't actually fly to Paris Island to get picked up at the airport. We're actually driven down in like a 15 passenger van, and whenever we show up, we show up. So, a funny thing was when you come up to Paris Island, they make you put your heads down so you don't see where you're going until you actually pull up to the receiving building,
mm,
and then you sit up and you get off. But for me, it was not the screaming DIs. They were just like, hey, get off, stand over here. All right, go up to that door, go inside.
Right.
And we could see that there was already a couple hundred other kids that had already been there for a while and had been through the first part of it. So I didn't have quite the whole screaming in your face receiving type of thing.
Right.
Um, but the funny story is about putting your head down. I went through the entire time at boot camp thinking the main gate off of Paris Island was that way when it was actually that way. So I
Uh,
was totally turned around. So it was a good thing I didn't try to make a break for it because I would have just gone straight to the swamp.
oh my good.
Um, but
That's
fortunately for me,
good.
fortunately for me, the first couple days were not that bad because when you first get there, before they even like change clothes or anything, you're in like these school desk kind of things with your head down and your stack of receiving paperwork and all that. And some drill instructor came in and he said, I need 4 volunteers. And I was like, well, anything's better than sitting here for the next 8 hours. So I just put my hand up. And they took us in the back, and basically we were just shuffling boxes of supplies around for all the recruits that were coming in. And we were being managed by civilian employees who really didn't care about the process. So my first couple of days were actually not too crazy because I was just volunteered for this thing, and they stuck me in the back, and I'm just moving boxes around and being busy. That's the number one thing that will get you DI's attention at Paris Island is standing around looking like an idiot. But
Right.
if you're doing something, they'll generally leave you alone. So
How upon graduating, how for it, I've heard stories about advanced infantry training, but how does one uh, get the MOS that you had, the military occupational specialty, and take me through that.
yeah, the Marine Corps is unique, I guess would be the nice word to use, in that you cannot enlist for a specific MOS. At least when I did in 2003, you could only enlist for more of like a pie slice of MOSs. So when I went in, I was going to be in aviation, and I was supposed to be going in on a flight crew MOS, but I learned afterwards my recruiter may have massaged the data a little bit for me, and so I knew I was going to be in air wing, not on ground side. But outside of that, you really don't know what job you're going to get till you come out of boot camp, and then you're put into a narrower pie slice pipeline. So you go to what's called your A school, which for aviation guys is a lot of it's in Pensacola, Florida. And even inside there, there's dozens of jobs that you could come out of that school with. And so when you graduate your A school, that's when you actually learn what job you're going to have. And then you go on to what's called a C school, which is your kind of final tune-up school for that specific job. And then you go out to the fleet and into your actual unit. So I went to boot camp in August of 04, and I did not know what job I was going to be doing till probably February of 05.
Wow. I couldn't imagine the heat down there in Paris Island in August. That must have been brutal.
Yeah, it was very humid experience, that's for sure.
How do you think it obviously, and this is one of the things that I truly regret. Not, I think that if I could do anything again, I believe that military experience, it might not be for everybody, but I remember there's actually a rabbi who I knew and still do, who was a Marine just around the time Vietnam ended, and the least likely Marine. He said, I wanted to go in because there were so many bad habits that I had that I wanted. And this is an 18-year-old. A lot of 18-year-olds don't think like this. Maybe this is why the guy's special, but I wanted to make changes to my life. And I would imagine, and it's served him his whole life. How would you say that the Marine Corps prepared you for what you're doing now in the best possible way?
Yeah, there's really a spectrum of people inside the military, the same as anywhere else. I think the opportunity that the military and particularly, of course, I'm going to advocate for the Marine Corps is the most hardcore. What they really offer is the structure for kids who don't really have a whole lot else going for them in that area. That like your guy you were talking about, you're 18, 20 years old. I was a little bit older. I was 22 when I went
Yeah.
in. So I was the second oldest guy in my platoon. I was grandpa.
Wow.
Um, but you're looking for that opportunity. You want to be better. Um, and the military can offer that structure to you. But really, the military is not, for some people, it is going to turn them around who they are fundamentally as a person. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. They come out of the military just as big of a, kind of turd as they were when they went in. But for young people who are wanting something more, and they know they want to be better, and they want to test themselves, and they want to be tougher, and they also want to serve their country, and they have patriotic motives, it does give a good structure to get you going in the right direction. And basically a scaffolding that you can then begin to build on. That, oh, now I do have a gym close to where I live, and I can go to work out. Oh, I can eat healthy food over at the commissary. You can eat junk food too.
Right.
But you now have the framework that you can start to build your life on. You have people expecting you to be certain places at certain times, and if you're not, there's consequences.
Sure.
uh, Beyond that, though, I do think it is up to the individual to, what you do with it is what you make of it. And you can come through a military, just one enlistment like me, or a whole career, and be a better person on the hind end of it, or you can come out and actually be a worse person. It's not, the military really isn't going to have a huge influence into your personal character and who you are. That part is up to you.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
I mean, you also came out uh, with with the desire to become an entrepreneur and also see how that figured into farming. Am I correct?
That stuff actually was way before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had my first little business when I was 8. Well, to say my dad has his own business, so I kind of grew up around people who had their own thing going on. So I kind of call it the family curse, but
Mm.
it's a two-edged sword. Of course, working for yourself. But yeah, to me, that was just part of growing up. Was, oh, I work for dad. He's got a business. Well, I can do my own business and have something. And you weren't getting paid an allowance to do chores, so if you wanted any pocket money, you had to go out and actually do something.
To clean up horses and from the stalls. I think you were talking about that in an earlier interview that
Uh-huh.
you probably learned what hard work was like long before you were doing it just for yourself. Did you have mentors along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say active mentors. There's ones that you kind of sit down with and talk with on a regular basis, but certainly a lot of passive mentors. People that you read and try to emulate their stuff. And certainly now with social media and YouTube, it's a lot easier to find different people that you want to follow. Um, but as a young person, um, we were a fairly self-contained family. Especially when we moved from New York to Virginia, we were basically starting all over. So I was kind of a bookworm, fairly introverted kind of person, and kept a lot of my own company.
Hmm. How long did it take until you felt that you were gaining a community or a farming community? Was that something hard to come by when you felt that I'm really part of something and I could actually learn from other farmers in the area? Obviously, the last 10 years there have been outlets where you've used social media, not just for Farmbuilder, but where you could yourself glean any kind of knowledge from various people.
For sure, and it's always a continuing evolution. The moment you feel like you've arrived is the last moment that you'll learn anything new. And so, a lot of the more conventional farmers around me, I don't preach the gospel of regenerative agriculture to them, because I know that's a kind of out of place to come in as the young whippersnapper and be like, let me tell you what's up. That's not going to get you anywhere. Lead by example and let them see what you're doing, and then they'll start asking questions. Uh, but also, I'm not really doing this for the audience. It's not about building a huge following and being an influencer and all that stuff. To me, this is about what we're doing on our farm and just sharing what we do, and in more of a business term, let the market decide, if it's something that they value. And there's been a good response to that, but I think it's a little bit dangerous to start catering what you do to what you think your audience wants and becoming something that's almost a creation of their molding, allowing them to push you, than to just saying, this is what I do, this is what we are, and whoever likes this and wants to keep up with it, great. Glad you're here. To me, that's kind of been my mentality towards it, is not chasing, the things that a lot of quote unquote influencers seem to chase. That to me can be, that's just cotton candy.
I'm glad you said that, because it's obviously, if you were doing it that way, I couldn't imagine Jordan Green being so passionate about it. I mean, this is something that you're willing to share, and I think that's why you do have people who truly admire you. And I've only known about you for a week, and I'm hoping you hire me to just to bale hay and teach me the business. I'll move out there. How did I was really falling in love with all the pigs and the piglets in those videos, especially. My knowledge is of all these artificial atmospheres, in the Midwest, where you see them in cages, and here you have, with unnatural settings, and here they have their own little runs and pastures, or however you've set it up, where they're truly happy. And how did you choose to go that route in terms of, like, why pig farming? Why, what informed those decisions?
Uh-huh. Well, a couple lanes it could go into. One being putting animals back into a more natural type of setting. Um, the fundamental shift that occurred in agriculture, say 1800 through now, is a shift from bringing animals to where the feed is, to now we bring feed to where the animals are.
Oh yeah.
So every one of those big pig barns that you see in the Midwest, or like around where we are, huge poultry houses, you can look at that and say, oh, that's a 10-acre poultry farm that produces 500,000 chickens a year. But what you fail to see is the 500 or 1,000 acres of crop production that's behind that farm somewhere, or 1,000 miles away, that is actually growing the grains to feed those animals that are in that barn. So it can have an illusion of, look how efficient we are at growing these animals in this barn, but you're not seeing the whole picture, because the rest of the resources that are needed for that facility to exist at that scale right there are offsite. They're somewhere else. You don't see them. You don't see the huge crop production. You don't see the huge petroleum production that has to occur for all the power that's being used, and all these things. What we're seeing, and people who are paying attention to it, is that this fundamental transformation of animals to feed, to now feed to the animals, is causing a breakdown in ecological cycles that we didn't see 300 years ago, because no one had 100,000 chickens in one barn. You didn't have pathogen issues then that we do now. You look at China and a lot of the issues that are coming out with hog growing there. It kind of got swept under the carpet with coronavirus, but there was a huge thing in China that happened in the last 3 to 4 years called African swine fever, ASF, which it's a virus that loves to live in the exact conditions that these large confinement buildings create. Cooler, damp places with plenty of hosts and no sunlight and continual presence of the host species. And this virus, which has been around for a long time, it does exist in the wild, but it mutates in these prime petri dishes, and it wiped out 100 million pigs in China.
Wow.
And that went on largely unknown to the American public, because who pays attention to that part of the news? And that followed on the heels of another pig pandemic a few years before, called porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, which wiped out tens of millions of young pigs, of piglets.
In this
And
country?
so, no, this was in China,
No, no, yeah.
but then the PEDV did come into the United States and killed 8 to 10 million piglets on farms. It,
Oh,
it basically just gives them diarrhea to the point where they dehydrate and are dead within a couple days.
wow.
And so you don't see that going on because, again, that's inside the barn, which is a biohazard zone that no one is allowed to go and see. And the ag community can be pretty tight-lipped about these kind of things. And so that's one element of it, that we're seeing these high concentrations of animals causing pathogen problems that have not been an issue at this level of severity in the past, but also a huge disconnect on the fertility cycle. So you have a huge manure issue where these facilities are, because they're producing, a hog barn produces hundreds of thousands of gallons of hog manure a year, which is collected in a big concrete pit underneath the barn and then is pumped out at different times of the year and sprayed onto fields, or injected. That's the new thing, is injection application, where it's these huge basically plows that are going through the field, and the manure is highly pressurized down into the tip of the plow, so it's spraying it into the dirt about 2-3 feet in the ground.
Well, this must influence you getting involved in being more mindful of the legislature or the legislation that's being written. Are you in contact with local politicians who have an impact on farming?
I wouldn't say I have an impact on anybody.
No, no,
I
no.
do.
Continue. I'm sorry.
But I do pay attention to it because these are things that I'm passionate about. And also, we do need to continually evaluate the production models that we're engaged in. Are they causing problems or are they solving problems? And every solution presents a new set of problems that then have to be addressed. So we couldn't just get rid of all CAFOs in one day and have no more problems. It's unfortunately not that black and white. But what we are seeing is, on one hand, a growing issue of very virulent pathogens that are now mutated beyond the ability of any antibiotics we now have to mitigate. So we've lost the antibiotic edge on a lot of these things. And on the other hand, we have a huge fertility problem in the soil. I mean, I don't know if you saw, there was an article 2 weeks ago, I think it was Harvard that did it, where they analyzed the topsoil of all acreage in crop production in the United States, and 40% of our cropland is entirely denudative topsoil. There's nothing left; it's gone.
How's the
And that's
Shenandoah Valley?
it's largely gone as well.
Uh,
I think the estimates for the Shenandoah Valley from 1750 to now are somewhere in the 30 inches plus or minus of topsoil that's been lost. And that's lost through a lot of it is poor tillage practices, so it's lost through wind and water erosion. But then a lot of it is also lost through an incomplete nutrient cycle, where a crop of corn is consuming organic matter out of the soil in order to grow, and unless you're bringing that manure back from those animals, you then get into a dependency on chemical fertilization, which begins a snowball effect of its own of further chemical dependency. So, try to tie all together. What we're seeing with modern industrial scale livestock agriculture is a very linear process where we have inputs that are being put in. It takes 13 calories of energy to produce 1 calorie of food right now. We can make that happen though because of petroleum. So we're putting all this energy in to produce the 1 calorie at the end, and then we have a huge waste stream of products at the end that has no connection back to the beginning stages of this cycle. And I guess it's anyone's guess how long we can keep this show on the road, but eventually, nature is going to balance out at some point. And to me, it would seem a better idea to try to figure out how to take that linear process and turn that into a circle of nutrients in, nutrients out, tying fertility and nutrients from the animals back to the ground that it's coming from, and using what we know with regenerative practices, animals can be used to enhance and improve the environment instead of being what is widely seen, in the media and in society and out on the farms. If you go to look at them, animal agriculture is a environmentally degrading process in a lot of applications.
I mean, there have been some rough times that we've been able, I mean, as a country, I mean, you think about the Dust Bowl and you think about other times that we've been hit either economically or in times where there wasn't the ingenuity and the resources behind it to sort of circumvent these problems. I mean, but you did say that the world is, or the earth has a way of balancing it out. I mean, you're still hopeful, right?
Oh, I'm still hopeful, but the way that nature balances things out does not care about people.
Right.
Yeah. If you lose all the topsoil and you no longer are able to rely on petroleum-based fertilizers, nature doesn't care.
Mhm.
You know how nature balances out overpopulation issues? A
Wow.
lot of things die.
Yeah.
If there's not enough grass for all of the buffalo or the deer, half of
Mhm.
them are going to die. And again, that's kind of an apocalyptic
You're
view
not an
on it.
apocalyptic guy.
No, no, I'm very optimistic about it, but
Yeah.
I'm also a pragmatist that
Right.
we have to look at what it is, and we got to call a spade a spade. And we can't, my whole life I've been going back to, you were talking about going to Farm Aid
Sure.
concerts. I'm 38 and I've been in agriculture since I was 21. And I'm sure there's people older than me who could verify this, but I've heard the same thing being said for the 17 years that I've been in this, that, oh, woe is me, farming sucks, you can't make no money, telling young talented people, don't get into farming, it's a waste of your talents, go do something else. It's the same thing that's being said over and over, year after year after year, and few seem interested in doing anything about it. Actually changing what you're doing or trying something new or looking at the fundamental um, pillars of what your operation is all about and being willing to pivot. I have friends who are into commodity dairy, doing milk and dairy products. As long as I've known them, they've always complained about dairy prices. But yet
Mhm.
here they are, still doing the same thing. So after a while, you just have to, I guess, leave the pack and go out on your own and just say, you know what, you guys can keep doing that and keep complaining about it till you're in your grave. But um, that's not how I want to spend my life.
That's the boot camp talking. I mean, you're pivoting. You're you're dealing with stuff. No, but it's inspiring because it really does come through. Your passion comes through, and I like learning about new things, and this is something that has been very refreshing, and I'll continue to follow it. And what let's end on a high note. What's exciting right now for you
Um,
specifically?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are exciting to me. Excitement comes from traction and actually doing things and moving the ball. Whatever your ball is, whatever my ball is. I know there's people who have much bigger farms than I do, and will do a lot more to impact the community than I ever will, and that's fine because that's their ball. For me, moving my ball is what gets me excited. I hate stagnation and just sitting in one place. That was actually one of the main reasons I ended up leaving the military. Was as much high speed stuff that you do, it can become a very monotonous and stagnant operation that you're engaged in. There's only so many different ways to fix an F-18. Yeah. um, and so that's what gets me excited right now is we are developing new farms. We bought our first big piece of property last year that we are in development of right now. So
Congrats.
being out there and just working on infrastructure and being like, wow, this is actually going somewhere. And having maybe a neighbor or two who's not too excited about what we're doing. It's like, oh, somebody's taking notice at least. um, seeing the impact that we're having with other, people who are working for the farm now, and how we are improving the quality of the team that we have with us every year, becoming better leaders and better people ourselves. That's the kind of thing that gets me going. You're either moving that ball forward or it's rolling back on you. And I like to be in the forward facing direction.
You have kids?
Yeah, we have 3 kids.
Wow. How old?
So they are 12, basically 9, and basically 7. Their birthdays are next week. So
Good. Congratulations. And Laura, she's as passionate about things as you.
she's a harder worker than I am.
Right.
She's a much more detailed person than me. I'm the head in the clouds soaring at 50,000 feet, like, man, it'll be awesome when we do
Right.
this. And she's like, all right, well, what's the actual details of how this is going to work? And let's have a 4-hour conversation on that. And, things that to me are like, I don't want to do that. But certainly we have a very yin and yang relationship that makes our business work.
That's great.
She's full time in the business. She heads up our marketing and customer care side of the business. And, that suits her skill set very well. She interacts with a lot more people than I do. It's very detail oriented. Whereas, me, I'm perfectly fine to be out with the pigs in the woods all day and, not talk much at all to people. So it is, there's a lot of value, whether it's a spouse or a business partner, of having someone who offsets your skill set. So they don't do everything that you do well, but they do everything you don't do well. That's what they do well. And if you can have that dynamic going with someone, that really, to me, seems to be a very common denominator in successful family businesses, or, husband wife kind of teams, is that they have this good yin yang kind of thing going on with each other inside the business.
That's magnificent. That's what I want. You know any single women to set me up with? They don't have to
I
be
have several
farmers.
that work for me.
Okay, well then I'll be out there next week. But
Okay.
Jordan, I really admire what you're doing, honestly, and this has been so. I got to tell you, it's inspiring. It's the last couple of days have not been wasted moments looking at your videos and learning more about this. And I let's talk in a year. I want to see what's
Sounds
going
good.
on with you. Let's do it every anniversary, but it'll be after the fact, and maybe no one will have to wear masks at that point.
For sure.
All right. Well,
If you come on out to the farm at some point, we won't make you wear a mask. So
thank
you can
God.
go out- you
I have a
can go out with the
9-year-old.
cows.
I have a 9-year-old daughter who, right before, she said, "Who are you talking to today?" I said, "A farmer." Well, that sounds kind of boring. I said, "No, not this. This is. I think you'll really appreciate it." But listen, take care of yourself and keep fighting the good fight, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
I'll